And welcome, fight fans, to another episode of Before the Bald Man Speaks. I'm your host, as always, Andrew Lawrence, coming to you live after UFC Saskatoon on UFC Fight Night 74 for the people who are still keeping track of numbers after all this time. In a very uneventful main event between Max Holloway and Charles Oliveira, ending in a TKO injury stoppage. Bizarre, unsatisfying result. Rare Sunday card, and I could tell that just by the response on Twitter, there wasn't too many people feeling it, with a lot of people opting in for the WWE SummerSlam instead of a fairly mediocre card. But this card really delivered, and I think that there was some fantastic finishes despite the awkwardness of the main event. Here joining me on this episode, the 12th episode of Before the Bald Man Speaks, to help me break down and analyze everything. He is the managing editor for MMA Oddsbreaker, Brian Hemmington. Brian, how you doing, brother?
I'm excellent. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Pretty crazy night to have me, but I'm happy to be here.
No, yeah, I'm glad we could get you. I know that you're on the road right now, but we're happy to have your insight as much as we can, or in any way we can, rather. Let's talk about the main event. A really awkward finish there, I guess you could say. Looks like Charles Oliveira went in for a takedown and injured his shoulder.
Yeah, it was like Manny Gamburian-esque from The Ultimate Fighter season 5. Just couldn't get the takedown that he needed to do, but just hurt himself, and it's extremely anticlimactic. I mean, everybody was just so amped for this fight because they're two of the best young up-and-comers in the featherweight division, and it just didn't live up to the hype. I mean, it was just so awkward, and I mean, some people were just cursing it, saying that there's no way that this fight could suck. There's no way anything could be bad about this fight, and then boom.
And then MMA happened. You know, this is a constant theme in.
Sometimes these things do happen.
Anytime that the UFC hardcores want something too much, it's going to get taken away from us. We should just resort and resign ourselves to that fate.
I did that once with Nick Diaz and Carlos Condit. I went, it's impossible for this fight not to be one of the greatest fights in the history of UFC. And we all know it.
And it went down in legend. Yeah, and it went down in notoriety rather than, any kind of real history. I really liked the idea of this main event because it almost feels like or MMA and really UFC in their promotion really are almost cultivating finally like a boxing-esque attitude towards fights. This, like a fight like this, two young kind of prospecty guys, middle of the pack. This is a fight that boxing in its heyday would put together. It's almost as if, like, when I see this as a main event being pushed in our sport, that MMA actually is becoming really like a sport rather than a spectacle. Am I alone in this, or do you interpret this completely differently?
No, I completely agree. This was not just, an old veteran with a big name just headlining a card, like a Frank Mir versus Todd Duffy type of thing. This was two guys, I don't think they had ever headlined a show before, and they were getting an opportunity to show what they had. So, and clearly with both guys being right in there in the thick of the middle of the top 10 in the featherweight division, the winner of this fight was going places. I mean, if the fight had gone the way I think UFC was hoping for, I think they were hoping Max Holloway would win, and then boom, instant contender in the featherweight division. I mean, he still, I guess, is a contender, but not the way that they were hoping.
Yeah, I want to circle back with kind of where or how the UFC takes both of these fighters. But I just want to make one more point. I really think that this is a smart card to build because there's so little risk. It's in a it's in a kind of like a cranny, a real, not even a major city in Canada. And Canadians have been dying for cards and asking for more spots. They stack it full of Canadians so there's a local flair, and then you have this one opportunity for kind of two fighters really building their audience, two fighters who haven't really been able to at all, catch a mainstream name. But you begin that process by putting them on, Fox Sports 1 card. Sure, it's a Sunday night, but there's some sort of profile there. And, just the kind of nerves that a fighter can get over after being in the main event, even if it is a small-time show, I think that's all a benefit to a future name fighter.
Oh, yeah, there were definitely some nerves, too. I mean, Charles Oliveira crying on the way to the cage. I've been to his fights before. I mean, he was never like that. I watched him fight, I think, the opening fight of UFC on Fox 2, and he was singing along to his music the whole way to the cage, and then he goes and wins by calf slicer, just like that. So, this was a big deal for him, and yeah. I'm sure that he's pretty disappointed in the outcome. But honestly, I do think it's the best outcome because Oliveira had already lost to Frankie Edgar, so he really, what do they do with him if he did win? Edgar is the guy right now, so now they can kind of make a number one contender Max Holloway Frankie Edgar fight, which would be bonkers. But I don't want to get too excited about it because we know what happened tonight.
Yeah, right. Frankie Edgar will slip on a banana peel and break a collarbone.
Oh yeah.
But I really like that little piece of matchmaking that Max Holloway did at the end. I think that the UFC, Anik and Brian Stan were talking about a rematch of the fight that kind of got messed up tonight. I think that the UFC kind of can use this as just like a little bit of promotional shine on who I think they really are trying to make a real contender, who is Max Holloway, not so much Oliveira. And they can just move this right along, and this will be a victory that's kind of forgotten about and lost in the shuffle, but is added to that win streak conveniently enough. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. And Holloway's already out there talking about Conor McGregor and stuff. I mean, he's got the claim to fame as the only guy that's gone to decision against him. And, he did an interview with our site. Frank Trigg does interviews on our site, and he's calling out McGregor, saying, I want that rematch. And a lot of people were, talking and commenting, and so I think, there's definitely an opportunity here if the UFC wants to take it.
Honestly, that's a rematch that I would be interested in seeing. That fight was fairly competitive, but you could tell kind of that both were injured. Maybe that's hindsight speaking more than not, though. So Max Holloway, real smart guy. I really think everyone in the 145-pound division has got really intelligent about. You can catch kind of the periphery wave and, ride on the coattails, so to speak, of anything going on in the Conor trail. If you have any kind of relationship towards him in any way, it's worth it just for the clicks that you'll get in the interview. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It immediately becomes the headline of whatever article anybody writes about that interview. So, the second you say Conor McGregor's name, I think, 5,000 Irishmen immediately head over to listen to your interview.
Yeah, literally the entire country of Ireland has a Google alert out for Conor McGregor. Any article, I'm going to tag this video Conor McGregor just so I can get a little bit of the Irish love on it. Let's talk about some other fights in the co-main event. Eric Silva loses in kind of a fight that a lot of the bettors were clearly giving him a shot on against Neil Magny, coming off of getting trounced by Damian Maia not 22 days ago or something. Really impressed with Neil Magny here. Really disappointed in Eric Silva. Where do you stand?
I think it's impressive for Magny. I mean, this guy got blown out by Damian Maia. I mean, it was one of the least competitive fights of 2015. And then he comes back against a guy in Eric Silva that is one of the toughest first-round fighters in the UFC and wins the first round against him. I think he's the first person to ever win the first round against Eric Silva. I mean, just took the fight to him. And, obviously everybody's out there talking about how Silva looked physically, how he performed. He was slower, he was softer, he was sloppier. But, Magny went out there and he took care of business. I mean, the fact that it went to split decision is one of the worst judging decisions of the year. But at least they got the right guy. I mean, it should have been Magny probably 30-27 on all three cards. So the fact that a judge gave 2 rounds to Eric Silva Now that's another conversation for another day, I think. But man, that was pretty brutal. But I'm high on Magny. Great bounce back fight, and with Eric Silva, you get what you get with him. I mean, if he can't win in the first round, he's going to lose. Every time he's gone past the first round in the UFC so far, he's lost.
Yeah, I had kind of predicted that would happen. We saw that Neil Magny has been able to to take on a fighter's initial blitz. I forget who he was fighting. I want to say it was a fight in Asia. Maybe he was fighting an Asian fighter, but he took a wallop of a first round and ended up finding the finish in the second. And I think
it was against the Brazilian.
Who was it against?
I forget the name of it. Maybe Prazeres or I don't remember exactly. He lost the first round and then came back and TKO'd him.
Yeah, the point being, this is a fighter who can weather the early storm, and is not scared of is not scared of kind of finding his way into a fight, seeing what a fighter is going to give to him, and then it seems as time goes on in the fight too, he fights longer and longer, and it takes him a while to establish his range. But once he does, there's not too many dangerous spots for him. Eric Silva, I really do think that this is a case of kind of him blowing up under the big lights. I don't think that, I think that the story's out once, he's fighting any sort of caliber fighter or anyone who's not willing to break and break quickly. Eric Silva just, doesn't have it in him. I know there's a lot of allegations out there about steroid usage, and I don't think physically he looked all that bad or much worse than I can recall. It just seemed to be kind of the same old, more of the same from Eric Silva.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I heard it described kind of funny. Somebody said that it looked like this was Eric Silva's first fight outside the UFC, showing up out of shape in a regional promotion, just living off of his name type of performance. But that's been his MO his entire career. Every time he's fought, nobodies, he smashes them, or people that he can dominate, he smashes them. I don't think he has a win over anybody currently in the UFC, or if he does, I mean, it's just tough to jog my memory on it. And anytime he's fought anybody half decent, they smash him.
Yeah, and I thought that this was kind of going to be a good, interesting test for Neil, kind of, because despite his 6-fight win streak, kind of known in some circles as kind of a bum of a fighter. That 6-fight win streak isn't amongst the best names in the world, and that loss to Maia was, definitely a wake-up call. But I think a lot of what we found out tonight was that, Damian Maia still is a legit name for a very good reason, and that's because Damian Maia is very good. And much, much better of a caliber fighter than your Eric Silvas of the world. Overall tonight, the Saskatoon card was a great spot for a bunch of Canadian fighters. Yeah, a couple names didn't get it done, but let's focus on the Canadians who did well and performed well. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 6 big Canadian wins. Who out of tonight's card do you think made the biggest splash? Which Canadian needed the win the most, and or which one looked the most impressive in their victory?
Valerie Letourneau. I thought that I was buying the Marina Moroz hype, and she still looked good. But I thought, she goes out there and she beats Calderwood in 90 seconds. This could be, somebody that's a sleeper if she wins this fight, could get a title shot. And Letourneau handled her. I mean, Moroz is legit too. I mean, she had her moments in this fight, but Letourneau dropped her. Letourneau outstruck her. Letourneau outgrappled her. She got on top of her. She did not get armbarred like Calderwood. She looked great. And if you look back at her track record, not counting her Ultimate Fighter appearance where she lost to get into the house against Mata Ferry, but you look at her losses in her career, she's lost to Claudia Gadelha, I think by decision. She lost to Alexis Davis at 135 by split decision. She lost to Sarah Kaufman. I mean, none of those are losses that you should be ashamed of. And now she's 3-0 in the UFC and has looked better each time we've seen her. She's a contender.
Yeah, she definitely looked really good. Kind of a lackluster fight until you saw that. Kind of midway through the first, that knockdown kind of woke me right up and made me realize, oh, this is a legit fight we're going to see. those 115 women affairs can sometimes, be lackluster, to say the least. Big turnoff on Valerie is, a lot of people hate the way she's looking on the scales. It's clearly a deep weight cut for her. Does that prevent her from being able to fight with someone who's going to bring stamina like the top 5 of that division?
Well, she's looked terrible both times she's weighed in, and then she's gone out and performed pretty well. So maybe she's just one of those fighters that has ugly weight cuts, but it doesn't affect her performance. I mean, we've seen that with, Nate Diaz always looks atrocious on the scale. Charles Oliveira usually looks really bad. There's just some people that don't look good when they cut weight, but as long as it doesn't affect her performance, I'm all for it. I mean, that extra pound is going to be killer for her if she ever does get to the point of a title shot, but as long as she can make it and as long as it doesn't affect her performance, keep going, Val. I'm on your team. I'm exploding her up my UFC media rankings after this fight.
Nice. Team Letourneau, we're on board. Definitely want to see some of those head kicks land flush. That could definitely be some good stuff there. Let's change it up a little bit and talk about some Canadians that really faltered. We had 3 Canadian losses. There's actually 2 in my book that are like severely or are neck and neck and really terrible. But I'm going to give worst Canadian loss of the night to Chad Laprise.
Yes.
Yeah, poor dude got knocked out by Francisco Trinaldo. What we knew about Chad Laprise was that he was a striking guy. He was supposed to have a really good feel for distance. Supposed to be a really lethal guy. Does this loss completely expose him in your mind, or how do you label Chad Laprise coming off this knockout?
It's weird. I mean, he was looking good in the fight. He was outstriking. He was putting good pressure on him. He was mixing it up, and then he just got caught by a huge left hook, and then he never fully recovered. I think it's a situation where he got caught, although that does bring up questions about his chin potentially, but I think it's just a situation where he got caught. He's still young. He's still talented. He'll bounce back. He's a good fighter, but he looked really bad after he got caught. I think pulling guard was or just staying on the ground and not getting up was a bad choice too. Trinaldo is just a smothering guy that can really punish you on the ground, especially if you're hurt. So not a good choice, but maybe that's just all he could do at the time. But yeah, he looked rough. He looked real rough, and it's going to be tough it's going to take a few fights and a few wins in a row to bounce back, because he was a guy that a lot of people were pegging their hopes on because of how good he's looked so far. But yeah, did not look good tonight.
Yeah, I kind of always pegged Chad Laprise as a little bit overhyped. I know Canada's just so desperate to have some sort of title contenders in the pipeline. They need more contenders, but he's not the guy, unfortunately. The major, and I tend to agree with you that it just seemed to be like he got caught. The one spot that raises the eyebrow and kind of keeps it perked up there is that when he got caught, his right hand was very far out of position, and his mouth was just open enough that you could tell when he landed that hook that he was in serious trouble. I had no problem with the stoppage. I heard someone complain on Twitter. I think that's nonsense. I don't even really want to address it. The other Canadian loser who really stood to lose a lot was Sam Stout.
Yep. I knew you could say that one too.
I think a fighter that really needed the victory if he wanted his career to continue in any meaningful way. Is that fair?
Oh, 100%. I mean, this is a guy that's been in the UFC for so long. I think this was his 20th fight inside the octagon. I mean, he's had the most fight of the nights of any fighter, I think, in the UFC history. But, Father Time wins every battle. And as good as his chin used to be, it's just not anymore. I mean, this is a guy that could take a shot from anybody in the division, and then now he's had 3 straight fights where he's been knocked out. And after that last one, I mean, it was sad. I don't know if you watched the one video, behind the scenes All Access, and he was like so upset after the fight, saying, I used to take twice as heavy shots from those guys, and it was nothing. I took an extra break after this fight, and I still get knocked out. what's wrong with me? And people were asking him about that before this fight, and he comes out and he says, I don't have a bad chin. I just have to work on my defense. And guess what, Sam? As you get older, it's proven science. Your chin gets worse after you take all that punishment. It never gets better. It's never going to recover. And it's just a shame. I mean, he's a great fighter. He's been one of the staples in the lightweight division. So, but yeah, I think he's done.
Yeah, I feel a lot the same way. I feel like Sam Stout, was a very entertaining fighter and an interesting period in the UFC. Kind of a guy who got his name amongst hardcore fans by putting on exciting fights, and was one of those fighters that people loved and were excited to see, and because it always seemed like it was entertainment, fireworks. Oh God, he had that trilogy of fights, and it escapes me against whom. Do you remember Sam Stout had a trilogy, and Sam Stout should have never had.
Spencer Fisher.
Thank you, Spencer Fisher, of course.
Yeah.
And I think that's probably in a just a weird oddball sense, probably what it'll be best remembered for. So a really entertaining fighter, and seems like a real nice guy. Only wish him the best, but I think you got to start thinking about stepping away from the sport when your logical brain can't process and knows that your chin is turning you off quicker than it would have before.
Yeah, I fully agree. I really hope that he's gonna. I mean, I heard some people say that he's gonna be stepping away. I don't know if he retired in the ring. I didn't get a chance to see it, but I do think that he's done. I mean, I hope the UFC does something with him, maybe in Canada, because he's been such a great veteran and he's been such a good presence for them. But yeah, I really don't want to see him fight again. Frankie Perez is not a guy known for his knockout power. And this is a guy that I thought was going to try to just out-wrestle Sam Stout the whole fight, and he goes out and puts him away that easily, that quickly. Yeah, I don't want to see it anymore.
Yeah, everyone, I think, is mostly on the same page there. All right, Brian, I'm going to try a new segment in this show. We'll see on its level of success, and we'll see its level of entertainment. And what a better card to guinea pig this on than UFC Saskatoon.
All right.
Saskatoon seems like a city where you could run some government testing and no one would really notice. You know what I mean? All right, it's going to be called Name That Prelim Fighter.
All right.
I will tell you something that a prelim fighter did, most likely in some sort of I tell you what they did. You try to name the fighter. If you don't know, you get to say, narrow it down for me. You'll only get 2 of those, and I'll tell you kind of when it happened in the card, roughly, fight pass. Did it happen in the early prelims? But all right, so name that UFC prelim fighter. This UFC prelim fighter did it for mom.
Did it for mom.
Did it for mom.
Well, that means they won.
Extra hint. He let the kids with dreams know that dreams do come true.
Whew. So I didn't see this interview, so
who out there? Yes.
It sounds like something a Canadian would say, so I'm just narrowing it down. It sounds like something that the winner would have to say in the post-fight interview,
sure.
So that cuts it down to 6, and then you cut the winners. I'm going Chris Kalades.
You went too polite. I threw you off by saying something nice. It was Frankie Perez. Frankie Perez moves post-fight. Frankie Perez, legendary move post-fight. Probably one of the greatest post-fight moments in UFC history. Hops the fence, floors Sam Stout, and then follows up with some ground and pound that was so accurate. Screams on top of the fence, "I did it for you, Mom." In the interview with John Anik, tells any kids with dreams, first off, make sure any of you kids with dreams know that dreams come true. Mentioned that Sam Stout was one of his idols and said that fighting Sam Stout was a dream of his. Is there anyone out there who's dream fight a Sam Stout? Fighters, dream higher, I would say. And then retires on the mic. really a legendary move by Frankie Perez there. What do you think about a weird situation like that? 28-year-old fighter, something like that. Retires from the game early, first UFC victory. Kind of not your typical end to a UFC fight.
I'm not going to lie, when I saw something about retiring in the cage after the fight, I thought that meant Sam Stout did.
That's the craziest part about it. If anyone needed to step away from the game,
Yeah.
it was the guy who just got knocked unconscious. Not you,
my
Victor.
goodness. You
Not
know what?
you, guy who shouted out his mother.
Maybe he just had that life goal. He wanted that one UFC win, and that's all that mattered, and he's going to go out on top.
I tell you, that's the
And then
highlight.
he'll be like full training camp Chad Mendes. You know, he makes that UFC debut on short notice, loses to Johnny Case, and he goes, if I had a full training camp, you know, I could beat anybody in the world. And then he has a full training camp. He beats Sam Stout. Told you guys. I told you. I'm the best. I'm done. I'm going out.
This is the
Riding
also
off into the sunset.
ultimate brag move. You can at any time just whip out this highlight and be like, "Oh, how did your fighting career end?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, let me show you a tape of how it ended. See, and this is when I knocked him unconscious." And then I just said, fighting, boring, whatever. So walked away from it. Could have been the greatest in the world, but walked away from it.
Yep.
And then you don't have to go through the effort of like having to actually become the greatest in the world. So
Exactly.
really win.
Best of both worlds. And he wasn't going to be one of the greatest in the world, but this was a pretty good moment. If there's ever a time to go out, there you go.
Frankie Perez getting while the getting's good. Smart man. Okay, let's try to get number 2 here. This fighter walked out to Only Time by Enya.
Okay. I did hear about this. All right, it was not Krylov.
Oh, we could only have wished.
It's either Kalidas or Serkunov, I think.
Okay, I'll save you from your indignity. Wrong.
Am I wrong?
Canadian Shane Campbell comes out to Enya's Only Time.
I was thinking, I knew it was the first 2 fights. I forgot that Campbell fought second. For some reason, I thought Kalidas-Beal was second. Dang it!
There was a huge double-edged sword with walking out to.
I totally heard about this too.
Yeah.
Like people were just going, "Oh my God, he's even fighting like somebody that came out to Enya."
He did. He kind of had this like zombie-like first round, and it looked bad. If you go out to Only Time by Enya and you get knocked the fuck out, people are like gonna call for your retirement instantly. But if you go out to Enya and you win in a dominating fashion, people are just gonna consider you a badass motherfucker forever.
Oh, absolutely. And the fact that he goes out and loses the first round pretty convincingly, and then has the balls to just step it up and just take the fight to Silverio and win the next 2 rounds. I was so impressed with Shane Campbell. I did not think that he would be able to hold his own on the ground like that. I thought if he was going to win, it was 100% going to be stuffing takedowns and then outstriking Silverio, kind of like his last fight where Silverio got outstruck by Magomedov. But he did this all across the whole cage. He beat him on the feet, he beat him in the clinch, and then he beat him on the ground in the second 2 rounds as Silverio faded. I didn't think Campbell would have the better conditioning either, or maybe it would be about even. But great performance by Campbell. I'm a fan.
Yeah, it seemed like Silverio kind of fell apart a little bit. I have huge question marks with Shane Campbell. Guy's been knocked out like 10 times in kickboxing. Oh, yeah. But his grappling looked really good against a very large 155. It was a lightweight guy, very large lightweight. Just a very interesting, fight overall from Campbell. Another interesting point is nearly every fight that went to decision had a comeback second round.
Mm-hmm.
With the exception of Olivier Aubin-Mercier, just wiping the floor with whoever the hell, Tony Sims.
Mm-hmm.
Every single fighter came out in the second round, and most of them won their second round to bring it to a decisive third round. I mean, real quick, I'll review the notes, but I think that's the only one. Yep, came back.
I don't think Eric Silva came back, but
Eric Silva was on the comeback trail. No, Eric Silva solely gave up that fight. The fact that one fighter gave 2 rounds or rather, one judge gave 2 rounds to that fight to Silva was
Kind of came back in the third, at least the beginning of it, with some leg kicks. But.
No, yeah, he looked good in the third. I don't. You can give him a round in there. I don't really have too much room there.
Berkman. It happened in Calais Beal. It happened in Campbell Silverio.
Yeah.
Miraz was close in the second round.
Miraz looked very good in that second round, and I think I gave her a round. I gave that 29-28 to Letourneau, which is interesting because she closed it out with a takedown game. Or did I just hallucinate that? Anywho, you know what? This leads well into this. What ended up being your fight of the night?
Oh, hands down, Patrick Cote, Josh Berkman. Yeah. I mean, these guys left it all out there. They were taking years off of each other's life with that fight. I mean, that was a barn burner. I loved every second of it. I mean, they were just throwing bombs, and they were connecting. They were showcasing insane resiliency. I didn't think either guy was going to actually finish it, but then out of nowhere, Cote just blasts him. I mean, that was an awesome, awesome fight.
Yep, 100% agree there. I have it written down already. Patrick Cote. Do you double up with Cote and give him a performance tonight for the late third round KO?
I mean, it was a pretty awesome KO, and sometimes they do reward guys for pulling off surprise KOs against guys that are super durable. Mm-hmm. So it's possible, but usually they like to spread the wealth. So, I mean, they're hands down, they got a fight of the night. So maybe if for performance of the night, they'll mix it up, maybe give one to, like, Serkunov or one to, like, Krylov or something, mix it up a little bit. So I'm hoping they share the wealth.
Yeah. As much as I'd love to give more money to my man Nikita Krylov, I gave the one performance bonus to Patrick Cote and the other one to Trinaldo. I think that Trinaldo's...
100%, yeah.
It was such a clean KO, and... seemed to be a tide turner. It didn't seem like it was going to be Trinaldo's night, at least up until the point where that left landed. At least I think it was the left. Okay. Anyway, let's go with the last one. Name this prelim fighter. This will be the last one we do. What prelim fighter thanked the crowd for the horsepower?
For the horsepower.
Yes.
Okay, so it's another winner.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Frankie Perez, and it was not Shane Campbell.
They got no horsepowers.
And
I will also say this man pointed to the Reebok logo on his hat.
Okay. It's down to Krylov, Serkunov, Kalaitis.
I like where your head's at.
All right, I've said Kalaitis twice now, and I've been wrong. This guy needed the crowd. It has to be Kalaitis.
Wrong. Damn it! The Greek assassin will not appear in this game. It was me.
I tried so hard to get him involved. No. It's because he won me a lot of money. That's why.
Really good. I'm glad that you won some money, but fuck him and every other. So no.
Yeah, because he didn't. I don't think he should have won, but it was a close fight. But yeah. Just trying to get him involved.
Yeah, no, we could talk about Chris Kalaitis real quick. Chris Kalaitis, I thought, was, this fight had tight odds, and a lot of people thought there was a lot of value in Beal. I thought there was too many question marks. I don't really like betting guys in the 20-25 range of this weight class. It seems like, a lot of those, it's any given Sunday kind of deal, and anyone could beat anyone on a good performance or not show up and lose one. I think that Beal should have won this fight, but it's not one that I'm crying too much about. That third round was very shaky, and I think that it was 1-1 going into the third. So, if you're going to seal the deal and you're going to say, like, I'm the dominant athlete, which I feel like he was the dominant athlete, it's like you got to put the points on the board. You got to land the strikes.
Oh, yeah, way too tentative, and especially after how strong he started, he looked great. And then just slowed down. I think his gas tank isn't great at 125. He cuts too much weight. I think he's one of those fighters that would be better sticking around at 135. It's not like he lost any fights there at bantamweight. He was 2-0, and now he's dropped down to flyweight, and he's lost both fights. Although, technically he could have won this one. But, he just has not shown that same aggression and pace and activity. in the flyweight division. I think he's a fighter that actually is getting hurt by dropping down a weight class.
Yeah, I know that. It's been popular for fighters, even on win streaks, to kind of drop down so that they can be the bigger guy. But I think especially into flyweight, you're talking about much faster guys, and there's just less people in that division. So I feel like a couple quick losses at 125, and the UFC is going to say bye bye to you. They clearly have shown they don't give too much of a shit about 125, unless you're fast tracked to fight Demetrius Johnson. You're disposable. And that's a precarious place to be, and maybe there is more comfort in kind of the the 25 to 30 range at 135. Misha Saku, whatever. Okay. He was the silver bullet to Daniel Johnson's Werewolf of Texas, which I found to be.
Jolly.
Yeah, Daniel Jolly. He had to get it tonight. He was the one who thanked the Canadian crowd for the horsepower.
There we go.
Yeah, real quick KO from him. 205 needs something, right?
Yes.
Is he something for 205?
This guy is an exceptional talent. Emigrated over from Latvia at like 13 years old. He's just really, really good grappler. He's like a judo champion in Canada, and he's not a tiny light heavyweight. He is big, physical. I mean, he's not the most well-rounded. I don't think he's a guy that can stand and bang with a lot of people, but holy crap, if he gets you to the ground, things get interesting, and he's a guy that can be a game changer. If he can continue to evolve and improve his takedowns, I mean, I don't think there's a lot of people that can hang with him on the ground. I mean, he is just that powerful and dangerous. So I'm a big fan of him.
Yeah, I'd like to see him. It seems like he's the kind of fighter who might have got brought along at the right speed. You almost can't give these 205ers with a lot of talent too early to the UFC, because they clearly have shown they'll put any guy into any matchup. Prospects be damned almost in the 205 pound division. I'd like to see him fight some more guys, in one or two fights start challenging, that lower, that 12 to 15 range in 205. I say, we finally got a guy with some potential. Let's bring him on the slow track and go the old boxing route this time, huh? All right.
Definitely slow. Let him get some confidence. I think this guy can be really good. He's probably the best prospect right now that the UFC has in the light heavyweight division.
All right.
They are desperate for contenders.
Yeah, definitely. No question that we need some new blood in the 205-pound division. All right. Yves Jabouin takes a loss against Felipe Arantes. Is Yves done?
I mean, probably. I mean, he isn't very durable. I mean, he's been knocked out in almost all of his losses, and then he's also finished. I mean, he pretty much doesn't lose decisions. The time he loses in fashion. I mean, even Pablo Garza at the famed UFC Toronto show with that flying triangle. I mean, the guy just, and he's getting old. I think, he's 35, 36.
Yeah.
And at bantamweight, you don't see a lot of guys that age having much success. So even though I think at this point in his career, he's actually has the best skills he's ever had in his career, like he just doesn't have the physical tools to use them properly. So he doesn't have the durability to handle power, and he's just lost a bit of a step in terms of, I just think it's outworked by the better bantamweights.
Yeah,
so
I think
I don't see why he sticks around.
Yeah, I think it's the cruel fate that is MMA, in that by the time you gain the knowledge and the technique, that to become the best fighter you could have ever been, the body starts deteriorating. It's kind of the truth of every MMA career. And Yves Jabouin, another guy who was very interested and very exciting, and a name amongst hardcores. Had a very interesting time in the UFC and in MMA. And another guy who should probably hang it up. All right, so I've buried it. I've saved the best for last. I finally achieved dessert status. There's only one fight left to talk about, and then we'll grade this card and say goodbye. But this fight was a doozy. Nikita Krylov chokes the fuck out of Marcos Rodrigo de Lima, whatever, insert random Brazilian names here. But my man Al Capone with another quick victory. How impressed are you by Nikita Krylov?
Oh yeah, might as well throw him in the mix. He faces the winner of Cormier Gustafsson. He's on a roll. Nikita Krylov, man, he is the best, worst fighter ever.
That's exactly it. Now, I want to touch on this. The great part of Nikita Krylov isn't that he's a brilliant fighter, isn't that he's a fun fighter, isn't that those are all true. But the thing is his results far exceed his talent, and it's awesome.
I thought he was going to get murdered this fight.
Why wouldn't he?
After watching De Lima, after watching him smash his last two opponents in devastating knockout fashion, and knowing how terrible Krylov's chin is, and I mean, freaking, who is his? Cody Donovan, just awful. He freaking floored Nikita Krylov on the feet. I'm like, De Lima's gonna eat this guy for lunch, and Krylov is so sloppy and wild and crazy. Like Joe Rogan in his last fight against Netkov, like he's just calling out all these terrible mistakes Krylov is making with all of his grappling. He's like, okay, he wants to go for a gator roll. Oh, he's turning to the wrong way. He's not putting any pressure on him whatsoever. He's not going to get anything with this. He needs to go the other way. Does he not know how to grapple? And all of a sudden he locks in a guillotine choke and taps him. And I'm like, what the hell just happened?
Listen, Nikita Krylov is going to do it Nikita's way, you know? It's Mother Russia's way. It's the Ukrainian way. Don't ever doubt it. Nikita Krylov has now made me probably as much money as John Jones has made me right now. You know?
I can't believe it. I'm so glad I didn't bet that fight, but I had De Lima in every one of my counter move teams.
The biggest bet of my night was Nikita Krylov at plus, I think I got him at 125. I might even have got him better. It was my biggest bet of the night, so I will take that.
I can never bet him because I saw his UFC debut live against Soa Palele.
Soa Palele, you watched that live? That
was one of the worst fights in the history of the UFC. Like, the crowd was laughing at them for how terrible their fight was and how bad they looked. Like, just falling out of their chairs laughing at a fight. At like, how is this taking place in the octagon, in the famed UFC? And now this guy is I think, what, 4-2 in the UFC?
And down a division. The guy waited for a heavyweight fight at 207 pounds. Yeah. How this is
he should be fighting at 185.
This man is a genius. There
are lightweights, or at least welterweights, that weigh what he weighs.
Dude, Chris Weidman weighs more than him easily.
Yeah, 100%.
Speaking of throwback fighters who always look terrible on the scale but fight like animals, Chris Weidman's the poster boy of that. We talked about that a long time ago. But back to more important things and more relevant things to MMA, like Nikita Krylov. Nikita Krylov is a perennial overachiever, oddball, weird, freak, carnival show, everything I love about MMA. If we don't get to see Nikita Krylov against Fabio Maldonado in our lives, we'll have been cheated. If Nikita Krylov never gets a title shot, I'll be shocked. Kid's only like 21 right now. You think of like 6
he's young. I think he's 23.
That's the thing. He's got upside. Everyone really wants to doubt this guy. He's 23 years old, 22 years old, whatever age. And listen, that's like a Russian birth certificate, 23. Who knows what that real age is? You know. So some big things to look forward to in Nikita Krylov's future, especially if it continues to make me money.
You just know, though, the second somebody even close to a top contender like a Glover Teixeira, he's going to get Von Flue choked again.
Oh, yeah, that's another legendary move. Getting choked up by one, that only raises your stock in my book.
I haven't grappled in like 3 years. I know, okay? I know. Somebody passes to side control and you have guillotine.
Let go of the guillotine.
Let go of the guillotine. He's going to Von Flue choke you. Not Nikita Krylov. He does it his way. He's going to get that guillotine.
It's like that choke happened one time in the UFC. They named it after the guy who did it because they were like, "Oh, don't ever do that again." Because remember that time? Yeah, Von Fluke. Yeah, you're gonna get that the guy who did it. You're gonna get choked just like he choked that dude. So don't ever do that. And
Oliveira.
everyone paid attention in class except for fucking Nikita Krylov, who was in the back smoking cigarettes, trying to sell government cheese. He was just like, fuck it. I'm never gonna have to learn that. I'm gonna knock every person out who I ever fight.
He was too busy bootlegging in the 1920s.
No, I was thinking like like communist Russia or like Berlin during like the time that the wall falls. That's what I was going for.
Oh, I was going more Al Capone since that's his nickname. There
Oh,
we go.
Jesus Christ! It is late on the East Coast, people. All right, let's put a bow on this shit. The whole card. Grade the whole card. A to F.
A to F, I'd go. Because of how disappointing the main event was, I think that drops it a bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to go, maybe B minus, C plus. I mean, a lot of underdogs barked on this card. I think 7 out of the 12 fights.
Yeah.
Really impressive. Usually, on average, it would be 3 or 4. So, way above. So, I was excited about that. So, I'm going to go B minus.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, man. I'm looking at all my scores. Not too many A's. I'm seeing a couple A fights, but I'm seeing a lot of B fights. We had a really great undercard and some cool fights in the prelims. Not too many stinkers in there. And the fights that were kind of a little bit boring were fights that you anticipated being boring. I don't think anyone Oban Mosier, grinding out some dude. Well, that was supposed to happen. Kalades and Beal being in kind of an uneventful split decision thing, that was supposed to happen. A lot of what's supposed to happen happened in the dollar fights, and then a lot of weird, interesting results and exciting fights. I'll peg it at a B. I'll call it a B minus because, goddamn it, that main event could have been awesome, right? And yeah, it really could. All right, thank you so much, Brian, for coming on the show. I'll give you an opportunity here to plug your Twitter, plug anything you got going on, say hello to all the peoples, all right?
Oh, sure. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter. Very simple. At Brian Heminger, just my name. There's not a whole many of them out there. And then you can check out MMA Oddsbreaker. We have the best gambling content out there. Anybody that's looking to bet on stuff, I mean, we give all the information you could possibly need. And then I have a cool little radio show where I interview fighters called The Verbal Submission. Normally it's every Sunday night. We obviously didn't have it tonight because of the fights, but we're going to do a special Tuesday edition, so check it out. I'll be pumping that on Twitter as well.
All right, awesome. Definitely check out all of Brian's stuff, and once again, we thank him for being on the road and still making it happen, and still joining the program. Thank you. Have a good time at the ball game tomorrow. Thank you to everyone who tunes into the show and listens. Please tweet it out to all your followers. Subscribe on YouTube. Share it on Facebook or whatever the hell you're doing. Everybody, thanks for tuning in. Have a good night.
All right, thanks for having me.